Welcome to the Backstory, a special series from Future of Faith. In each episode, we take a look behind the scenes of projects from the National Storytelling Initiative on Christian Faith and Life. We'll be pulling back the curtains on our own work, sharing the wins and the struggles, and inviting others on to do the same. We're going to learn from each other and build this community together.
Okay, so I don't know if people are listening to this sequentially or they're popping around, but the last episode we did was the first one. And so y'all gave an overview of your projects and some, time and weeks have passed. I'm just wondering, as you are continuing to live into your projects, I don't know, what new things are popping up? What new perspectives are you holding in this current season?
I would say it's starting to feel very real now, in a way that maybe in the first opening days or weeks it didn't necessarily. I don't know. It still felt like an abstract notion, but now that we're starting to put timelines together and milestones on those, and we have to start reverse engineering from these local events out to what do we need to know in order to be able to hold these events effectively and to message them to a variety of different groups of people. So I would say that right now we are sort of a little bit underwater. It's almost like I felt like we were walking along a very nice stream for a period of time, leading towards a magical idea of a lake in the mountains. And now the dam broke and it's like, oh my gosh. And it's this big flood of water that's carrying us to some destination that I am not even sure about. But Shannon, how do you feel?
Well, it's so interesting because the other big grant that we have is 99% of our work, right? It's everything. And this isn't that. And it's a collaborative grant. So it feels even less you can get all the way in it and just be swimming. So it feels like it's actually taking a little bit longer to get going. But I just trust that there's a gift in that. So I feel like we're still just getting started. So we're working with an agency who's doing a big listening project with thought leaders in the sector and in the industry. And then we're coming together early March. So we'll hear what they've been hearing, which will help shape our work. And with that, also our audience tester. And so, that's just coming together. And I feel like we're just waiting, we're waiting to get really good data and really good research to be able to make the next steps. And so,
Shannon, can you say for the listeners here, can you say who you're working with in case they're interested in these people?
Yeah. So we're working with an agency, a marketing and advertising agency they've also launched a ton of social enterprise or social campaigns, their own, UK based, but it's Asha and Company. So ASHA and Company, and they've worked globally. One of their projects has been with one of the Nordic countries around getting people to really think about their relationship to the river and how it's affects all the communities in this nation. I can't remember exactly which nation it is, and they do all of that. So it's they've got campaigning and marketing and user experience. And then they're working in tandem with the audience expert that we have. So Asha and Company, and then Louise Chater is the person that we're using on audience.
Asha is so interesting because of their ability to straddle this. I don't know if it's intentional or if it's just who they are as people. I mean, you would know, Shannon, but they straddle the sacred secular divide so well. I mean, even the quote unquote secular things that they do feel sacred to me. I don't know.
They do. They are special. And funny, I mean, I met them through Andy Root. Even though I live in the UK, it took another American coming and doing work with them for us to meet. But yeah, they are special. I think you're right. It's the best work, I think, when it feels like that it hits in the secular space, but it's carrying the charism of sacredness.
I really respect them for all the reasons that you all have named, but also I think one of the things that they're so good at is not just helping. I mean, they get so laser focused and sharp on who it is they're speaking to and why. And then that obviously then informs this really beautiful how, but they make, in addition to just digital engagement and narrative work, they make beautiful artifacts, physical artifacts tied to their Shannon, I know that is like speaks to something in the depths of your soul. You also love beautiful artifacts, but I think like I really believe that those actually play significant anchors in the work of narrative. I think we underestimate our tangible experience with narrative change when we're so used to digital engagement with storytelling. So I'm excited that y'all are using Asha.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing I'm learning from them, which I mean, it's a total, yeah, I said when we were together last time, like, I feel like, we know that we're not experts in a lot of this work, like when it comes to story and narrative. So I feel like we're learning from experts, which I really appreciate that opportunity. And with them, they really are experts on how, even in marketing and advertising, the industry has shifted towards local and towards community. And I think they're going to teach us how to do that well. And like why He Gets Us didn't resonate for so many of us. Like, because it's the old paradigm. They would say that's the old paradigm of marketing and advertising and not the new one.
We did a little a mini focus group at our house during the Super Bowl for the new He Gets Us commercial, and I think it's the medium is still incorrect. Like for my 15-year-old, like he was like, whatever, a Super Bowl commercial, I don't care. And in fact, in some ways, is a little bit off-putting. But man, that message, I mean, it is so spot on. It's like they had read all the research and everything that connects to young people and teenagers, and then they put it into a commercial. And, it ends with this solo shot of this idea of like, what if a person, what if God is the more that we're looking for, but they're not, it's not a young person in the church. It's a young person in a desert. It's they're in nature. And it was like, so powerful, so powerful. Again, I don't know that it's the right container. Like, I don't know who you're really, like how many teenagers are you really reaching, but nevertheless, the messaging is spot on. By the way, Shannon, I'm going to put a plug. I know you're working on a different book, but just in the back of your head, I think you should write a book called Beautiful Artifacts. And you should teach us all how to make beautiful artifacts.
Oh my gosh, I can already see the intricate binding of this book. This is not,
It's like fully formed in my head right now.
That is so, okay, from your lips to God's ear, to some publisher that would publish it, right?
By
but
God,
Mark
we mean
Sampson
a publisher.
just said the same thing. Yeah. By God, we mean a publisher. Mark Sampson just said the same thing to me. He was like, because I do all these artifacts that are all about the entice part of a user journey. Like, how do you entice someone in? How do you start the journey? So, okay, I've just written it down. I love the title.
But the book should be interactive.
Beautiful artifacts. Yeah.
Like from the old series Seinfeld, when Kramer had a coffee table book about coffee tables that was also its own coffee table.
Table. Yeah, exactly. No, you got to be able to like actually take it out and like make the cup of tea to ask the question together. And
that's right. That's
right. I'm in love already. Okay, really quickly before we transition into the interview, our next interview with a storyteller. Speaking to something you said, Josh, earlier is like this like flood, this overwhelmedness. I feel like on my LinkedIn in the last week, the number of groups who have a storytelling grant who are hiring multiple.
And that's just because you accepted the connection with me, Elizabeth. We've been a very I'm joking, but yes, everybody is, and it's been so cool. And we've made at Future Faith a really concerted effort to repost these jobs and to tell people like we are going to be doing this. I mean, along with this podcast, it's one of the things that we sort of see is like, here's a way we can contribute here. And we've had, I mean, to your point, Elizabeth, like we've had a number of people reaching out to us and asking like, well, what do you know about that job? Do you know those people? And what do you think about their project? And is that a place that I'd be a good fit? I'm not trying to claim work that isn't ours. I just mean like, we want to support in any way we can. But there's so much. And
it will change an ecosystem.
I might add, at wildly varying salaries. Wildly. I've seen everything from like $45,000, a joke, for a full-time communications person, all the way up to like 150, for a director role, which is, I mean, these are all over the place.
This begs this begs the like discussion on what is the difference between communications, marketing, and storytelling. And I think I'm excited by how this could positively shift an ecosystem of work over the next, not just 5 years, but other institutions taking note that this is a wave that they need to jump on, which is exciting. But if if we're masking storytelling titles or we're masking communications work with storytelling titles, I think that we're not doing the good hard work of what does it mean to actually shift narratives. And so anyways, I think like we'll be learning more over time, but
Wait, but no, we can't. We're not ready to move on from Elizabeth. Now I'm super curious because
No, yeah.
now you have to tell us like how do you see that difference? Because I'm so like I've been on the fence about this of like, can a person whose expertise is in storytelling, can they do enough marketing and communications work, or vice versa, that you don't need two roles for this? Or do you think like can one person do all that, or is it two separate things?
It is a shared skill set that these people have. However, it is asking somebody to be of two minds in the same work. And I like a caveat. I do not speak for the Lilly Endowment at this point in time. Like I don't know what I need to say. Like this is not and so, but I really feel like what I believe a key difference is in communications, you're talking about you are advertising and your goal is to put the name out and advocate for the organization with which you represent. You are marketing them, you are trying to frame them well in a public light. Storytelling is not about necessarily it's the mission of that organization, but it is not about that organization. Storytelling then becomes about it becomes about the community, it becomes about the audience. And comms people do their work well when they're listening to the internal heartbeat of that organization. Storytellers do their work well when they're listening to the heartbeat of the community. And I think if you're asking somebody to have a role that does both, you're asking quite a bit of that person, and they deserve a heck of a lot more money to do that work and to lead two different types of teams, or you need two different people. You need somebody who is a communications director and somebody who's a storytelling director, and people who are thinking really specifically about those roles. And then I speak really transparently here, having been a director of storytelling inside of an organization alongside a director of communications. And we had to be really good at communicating with one another to not step on each other's toes, to make sure our teams weren't stepping on each other's toes, to make sure we heard and understood what each other's goals and outcomes needed to be. And sometimes they didn't align. Sometimes, and it wasn't like one person is right or wrong. It was like, this is why it would be really hard for one person to play this role, is actually us having two sets of goals and having hard conversations together that refined the work. He was needing a good, strong story to support the name of an organization. I was protecting the community members part of that story.
Yeah.
And together we could do that well, but just not having one or the other actually would have been challenging. Anyways, I've got lots of opinions.
Super useful. I mean, it's even as we like later this summer or in the fall, we'll be hiring for what is essentially going to be one or the other of those roles. And I staggered these when I wrote the grant because I knew we weren't going to get to hire both. Like we're going to hire a director and we're going to hire one more, but I wanted to wait on the second hire because I wanted to see what we had in-house first. And that means not just here at Future Faith, but also with our partners, and to see sort of like where might we be able to, because you do have to make these dollars. It's $5 million. It's not nothing. I mean, it's a lot of money, but you still have to make them go as far as needed to make the impact that you're going for. And so this is a super helpful distinction for me because I've been really like sweating this. I mean, I'm not going to make the hire, our director will, but for the project, but I've still been kind of nervous. Like, how do we find the right person? Like, this is a unicorn, but you're helping me to understand that maybe it's not. Like, maybe you're looking for a specific thing to complement whatever the other side of the skill set is that you have.
And I think the experience that person has, if you're hiring somebody with a career's worth of experience representing organizations from internally, it will be a big mental shift for them to think about narrative change in a new way. It was for me, I won't lie. I had to this is why I often tell people I learned more from social workers, educators, children, elders, and faith leaders about what narrative change is than I did from any communications training or degree I got. And this isn't throwing shade on my wonderful journalism program that I graduated from. or any of the amazing mentors I've had to refine my skill sets. This is really about that. It's not just about that. It's not just about that. There are other skills that I needed to hone in order to work in community with that was in a dignifying and ethical way.
I think it's super interesting though, because I wonder, like, not all of this work, not all of these storytelling grants are narrative change, right? I think that's the three of us all really
Mhm.
come at
Mhm.
this with some more narrative change leaning or storytelling. And so often though, marketing and communications it feels still salesy. And if you come with somebody that has a load of experience in communication and it's all about the orientation of the organization, can you really do good storytelling
Mm.
work that leads to
Mhm.
narrative change? I have a question about that. Is it possible?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that's
it's a
a
good question.
it speaks to me in some levels about the organizational again, like the entire organizational arrangement. Like
Yes.
what else is around? What is the infrastructure around? What are you already good at, that you need to
Mm,
then backfill for? Because you're right, like in some
mhm.
places, in some like heavily institutional structures, it's possible a storyteller alone would just get swallowed up.
Yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
agreed. It
I'll tell
depends
you,
on so much.
yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of somebody's work that might be good for our audience and just also good for, I think, Elizabeth, you've met Natalie McDermott at Heard.
Mhm.
She's UK based, but I think in terms of someone that can do both narrative change and like
Mm.
storytelling, but in a way that communicates and changes how people perceive organizations as well as delivers on content. I think they do that really well. She's got a TEDx talk out there.
Mhm.
I don't know what it's called, but I could figure that out. Anyway, just a thought.
Well,
Yeah, it's
that's
a good
a good.
question.
Yeah, no, and I want to be clear too. Like I think somebody can do both. I think that it's just being really cognizant of what you're asking of somebody. Um,
Mm.
what you're saying of like, or I can't remember if it was Shannon or Josh that said this, but just what is the organization uniquely equipped to do and good at?
Uh-huh.
I do want to transition to my conversation with Melissa Wigginton at Austin Presbyterian Seminary
Mm.
because I do think that they they've had their grant a bit longer than everyone that was part of the competitive grant cycle with the Lilly Endowment, and I think that they're doing something that is unique to exactly what they should and can be doing as a seminary in Austin right now. So I'm excited for folks to hear her. Hey everyone, I've got Melissa Wigginton here from Austin Seminary. She is the VP of Strategic Engagement and Partnerships, and here to talk about the grant. I'm excited because she received her grant a little bit earlier than many of the folks who are listening to this, and so what I'm excited to hear about are some of the insights that she has from a little bit more time figuring out what storytelling is and what they're needing to put out into the world. So, Melissa, welcome.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you.
I'm
Will
glad
you
to hear.
share a little bit for folks about Austin Seminary, a little bit of context about the institution, who you serve, and your mission?
Yeah, we're Austin Seminary. Our big name is Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary, and we are a freestanding seminary of the PCUSA, although fewer than 50% of our students are actually members of the PCUSA, but we grant MDivs, we have a DMin program, we have a youth ministry degree, and have been here for 120 years. We're in Central
Wow.
Austin near the University of Texas, and we have on-campus housing, so it's a great attraction for people to move to Austin, get a degree, and live in a great city.
It's an amazing location.
It
Not if anyone ever goes to Austin, you should go check it out. It's a very, very cool spot. So,
Well, thank you. We think so.
okay, storytelling. Can you
Yeah,
talk a little bit about the grant? Do y'all have a name for it? And what are y'all trying to do?
yeah. The name of our project is the Austin Story Project.
Nice.
We decided to just keep it simple,
Real clear.
real clear.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because a few years ago, Mark Yaconelli, who is the founder of The Hearth, which is a nonprofit storytelling organization in Ashland, Oregon, was working with me on another project. And we started talking and we said, Lily ought to fund some storytelling work. And we wrote like a one-page proposal and we took it to Chris Coble and we, had a Zoom call with him and everything. And he said, you don't have it, and so it was not, it was a no. And so when I got the call from Verity Jones inviting us to apply for this, it was great because it was something that I already cared about. And
Mm.
in the call, she said, "And we're wondering what Mark Yaconelli is doing these days." So I thought, "Oh, Chris did remember." Anyway, that is to say that the Hearth is our partner in this work.
Okay.
And the seminary already had a commitment. We already had a storytelling night that we did with our students every semester. We had narrative formation groups that our first year students participate in, and then the senior students lead those for the incoming students. And so we already had a commitment to narrative practice in the fabric of our institution. So in that way, it was a natural fit. But still, you get this invitation and it's for a lot of money and you think, what are we going to do? And really the place we've entered into it and sort of stand is to say there's not a story without a listener. And
Hmm.
so we're really focused on the teller and the listener. And the phrase that kept ringing in my mind from the first RFP was a fresh wave of storytelling about the vibrancy and hope of Christian faith and life. And
Yeah.
that was really appealing to me, not just as an officer of this institution, but as a Christian. It was really appealing to me to be part of work that would be described as a fresh wave of storytelling because it seems like it's a need. It's a need in the larger culture. I don't see Christianity as a big family, and I think there are certain branches that are dominating right now,
Mm.
and those aren't my branches. So that was appealing to think about how could we have fresh wave of storytelling for kind of story of Christian faith and life that was more familiar to me.
I love that. Excited because I think that we're on the same wave. You and I are on the same wave. So I'm excited about the wave that you're on. Can you describe that a little bit? Like, how has that looked so far? Well, let me back up. When did y'all receive money? How long have you had this grant so far? And
We
then what does it look like exercised?
Yeah. So we started January 1 of 2025. That's when we got the money.
Okay.
So we had known before that we had received the grant and had started thinking about what we wanted to do. So we're exactly 1 year, well, 1 year and 1 month into it. And you know how, and everybody who's gotten grants before, you have this dream, this vision, this plan, and then you send it in and you kind of forget what it was. And then you get the grant, you pull it back out and you read it and you say, "Oh, yeah," and some places you say, "What were we thinking when we said we would do that?" So, there's always kind of a sorting process and falling back in love and getting reacquainted with what your dreams were. We went for the 4-year plan, not the 5 years, so there was a
Okay.
lot more intensity, I think, to get started, and when I say get started, the grant has several pieces. The biggest chunk that we needed to get going on was what we call story circles. And
Mm.
the grant gave us money to train people to lead story circles. And our idea was we would develop this process. We would train people to lead these circles. They'd go home and lead these circles. And then it would kind of grow from there organically because there's no secret formula you have to learn. It's kind of intuitive.
Mm.
And but we had to come up with exactly what the process was, and in our process, we decided really to focus on what we're calling Jesus moments, and so the story circle is a circle of people gathered with Jesus as a person in the circle, and they're all telling stories in response to certain prompts that we give that we've identified as marking key moments in Jesus' life. So that if we see his life as a pattern of the transformation of the soul, then we're walking through that pattern in these series of story circles and inviting people to enter in well, they tell their stories first, and then Jesus tells Jesus' story.
Hmm.
And then we say, what does this call you to? Where are you as you hear this? And what are you pulled towards? So that's what we came up with. Now that's took a while to get that clear about it.
Yeah.
And then once we did that, you have to operationalize it. You have to get a website and you have to get the applications. You have to figure out how you're going to advertise and all of those things. And so by the grace of God, we just finished training 50 people in the
Oh,
first week of
wow.
January.
That's incredible. So you
Yeah.
have a website up.
Yes.
Okay, so I will make sure and put the link in the comment section of this. And you have trained 50 people. That's incredible. All in Austin. Are they
Yeah.
all okay? They're all over.
It's a national program. And we did something that, of course, we didn't know if this would work, but we said you can apply in one of three categories: a congregation, a church-related organization, or an independent practitioner.
Mm.
Because I thought there are spiritual directors and people like that out there that could use this tool in the ways that this process in ways that would contribute to the wave. So we got people in all those categories, and we said everybody needs to bring somebody with them because we figured two people come, it's much more likely to get traction than if one person goes and they come back and say it was great and put their notebook in their desk and that's it. So yeah, we had a selection process. We did say no to quite a few people. And that was primarily based on we wanted people to have some experience with facilitation,
Mm.
have some connection with storytelling. We were just looking for things that would increase the possibility that they would do it and make it go.
Yeah, that's exciting. So I am partial to embodied storytelling experiences. Yes, for many reasons. That I love that, and so there are folks listening to this with all sorts of versions of storytelling projects, making digital platforms, digital resourcing. But it sounds like your primary is an experiential, embodied storytelling experience meant to. And what are your hopes? What are the indicators that this is successful as y'all are moving along? What are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, right. It is very close to the ground, and I try to think of the right metaphor for it. And I wonder, well, is this kind of like working on the mycelium,
Mm,
the stuff under the ground that you can't really see?
yeah.
Um, and part of the reason that this appealed to me also was because I had heard and I have believe this to be true, that there was, that He Gets Us campaign, and that people would see that and be so taken with Jesus, and then they would go to the church in their neighborhood, and they would be confused, like, "Where's
Mm,
that guy?" And so I thought, what if you could have an experience where people entered in with a low bar, low barrier to come to be with Jesus and connect their story in a way that felt very natural, but they were having this experience with some people who were already in congregations. And
mm.
so, and I'm a Methodist, so I'm just going to say, if their hearts be strangely warm, then they would know somebody in a church that they could talk to about it.
I love
So
that.
that could, we don't know if that's going to be the case. Everybody who got trained committed to run 3 cycles of so 3 different story circles, each going through the whole pattern.
Okay.
One of them has to include people that they don't already know. One of them has to include people that are not the usual suspects.
Yeah.
So we're gonna test this and see how they're able to do that.
How big are the circles?
Well, because we only wanted to ask people for 90 minutes,
Yeah.
we're keeping them small, like 7.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
So markers of success, do
Yeah.
people do it? Do they connect with people outside their regular spheres? And then we're thinking this is going to be like we're going to create a network.
Mm,
These people are be our network, and we can connect them with each other, but also as we discover other resources from other projects, as we create things,
mhm.
there's a distribution system in place. And I think the other measure will be, do people do this after this is over? You
Sure.
know, uh, that's really going to be the tell.
Oh, I'm excited to talk to you a year from now and hear what you've learned. And as a I mean, you've had about a year, a little over a year. Have what kind of pivots or okay, we got to change our mind here type of moments have you had so far as folks are literally taking their first steps into this with their own grant money?
Yeah. We, um, we did a little pilot project with some young adults because that's really kind of the heart where my heart is.
Mm,
And we're gonna the next cohort we train will be only young adult story guides. So
okay.
we're start recruiting for that now. And in this pilot that we did with them online, it was incredibly confirming of our instincts because
Mm,
they would have this experience and they would say, I had anything in common with Jesus. You
mm,
know, it was radical for them. Now, when
mm.
we did it with the, older people, they were not quite as amazed. But so we thought that these young adults would go out and they would just, be able to get groups going. That was our purpose. And it turns out it's really, really hard for
Mhm.
people to commit to come to something 6 times.
Yeah.
And that is going to be so, did we pivot? No, we're still asking for it. Are we sobered by it? Yes. And, we thought, well, all needs to be embodied, but then we thought, well, you could do some online if you had to, if you
Yeah.
some embodied and some not. So the purity of the model is being diluted by human reality.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And there are a lot of projects out there that are relying on factors that they well are uncontrolled, that they can't control because of the number of community members they're trying to engage in their work too. So it sounds like a lot of people are in that boat. Without, taking too much away from your curriculum or your guide that you created, I'm curious about at least one of the questions you ask, because that's one thing I really believe about storytelling is that actually, the majority of storytelling is actually story listening, which means we have to be better question askers, And so I'm super curious of at least one or at least alluding to one of the questions that you ask
Yeah.
in group.
Well, we have one that we recommend using for, like, an introductory session, like, "Come and see if you like this, and then if you
Mhm.
wanna do this, we'll move into the other pattern." But that question is, tell a story about a significant meal that you
Mm.
remember, a memorable meal in your life. It could have been a special occasion, it could have been, it could have been last week, it could have been when you were a kid. But who was there and tell us a story about the why and the what of that. And we have found that everybody can tell a story like that, and they're beautiful. One of our what I haven't talked about is as we figured this out, we really try to think, what does the world need? And we kind of concluded people need experiences of belonging,
Mm.
transcendence, and transformation. And so those are sort of our 3 core values. And so when somebody tells the story about, I went to my grandmother's house after she had died, and I cooked the food that she would always cook for me, and I set her table with her china and her silverware, and I set 2 places, and I sat down at that table and shared a meal with her. You're in it. You
Yeah.
are transported there. And everybody has a story like that. They're
Yeah.
beautiful and they take you into this. And so then everyone tells their story. And then Jesus says, um, it could have been a Passover like so many Passovers before, but I knew this was going to be my last time to be with
Mhm.
my friends until the kingdom comes.
Yeah.
And they didn't know that, but I did. And I wanted it to be really special so they would always remember this meal we shared.
Okay, I'm signing up for the next story circle in San Antonio. Please, I hope there's a San Antonio leader soon, and I wanna attend one.
Yeah. One of the
Beautiful.
things that we are still working on is, we've written it so that everybody has a script and they can have what Jesus said. But we're about to recruit more writers so that there are multiple voices representing what Jesus might have said. And So that's exciting. And I think, we're not telling people you have to use the script, but we want people to feel confident going into it. And if you need to change it a little bit for your own language, like that's more my language than what's written in the script. We thought people would be all over us about, you don't know what Jesus would have said or what he thought or what he felt. And if they did, they haven't confronted us with that yet. So I made a, pretty good theological argument why it's okay to do this. I guess it convinced some people, but I really think the whole story is about imagination in a way. Even true
Yeah.
stories, real stories, they're always an act of imagination, an act
Mm,
of enchantment. And
yeah.
so that's what we're doing. We're just entering into this realm of that conjuring of, these transcendent but very human experiences we had. What might Jesus have said about that?
Well, so
Not
that's
about
beautiful.
it, but what would his story have been?
Yeah. No, that is beautiful. I love, love, love that so much. And I think, yeah, our society needs that. So I'm excited about that. Okay, last, just one quick word to the folks who are listening who are just starting this. What do you wish you would have, maybe someone would have told you, or what's an encouraging word that you have for them as they're exploring and asking a lot of questions right now?
Yeah, I think it takes some time. And that, don't worry about that. Take the time that you need and pay attention to where sort of way opens and where it doesn't. And and I think having really good conversation partners, have a really good team. Part of what's hard about these grants is you need to hire somebody right away to get started, but then they come, you're like, well, we don't really know yet what this is, and they're looking at you like, what do I do today? You hand them the grant, you say, do this, and if that's what they're feeling, I've had that experience many, many times, and I think embrace one of the and when Mark came on, we both said, "We want this to be fun. We want this to be life-giving." If it's not life-giving for us, if it's not a fresh wave of living water buoying us up, then we aren't doing the right thing. You can't we wanted to have integrity with that vision of this new, just all the things that come to mind when you talk about a fresh wave of anything, of storytelling. So, I don't know, that's my philosophy is, be in alignment in yourself with what it is you're trying to do in the world and follow that. That's not very practical, but
That's very practical. It's like embrace the ambiguity. It's okay. Yeah. Yeah. No.
now I will say one thing I've done that I think is going to turn out to be a really good decision is I hired these people as evaluators. That's always been my weak spot in these grants. So I've spent the money to get some good evaluators. It's a company called EffectX, and
Great.
they do dialogical reflection. They can do all the quantitative stuff, but they also do qualitative, and their processes are really about listening a lot.
Oh,
So
good.
it was in sync with our values. And so I'm excited about working with them. We brought them to the first training for 2 days, and I gave them a time on the agenda. And when they got up to tell about their company and everything, they said, "Well, we're gonna start with a story." And I thought, "Oh, they're hooked."
Yeah. Effect X, you said?
Uh-huh.
Okay, amazing. We'll make sure to link their website out in the comments as well, because I know folks are talking about evaluation themselves. And yeah, very, very good. Melissa, thanks for your time. So
For asking. I hope that I've given you what you need and that something will be helpful to people, and I'm glad to have one-on-one conversations if anybody wants to talk, and I love the work and, really grateful for the people who've taken the risk to do this. It's something really new in this industry, in this segment, and we'll all get there together. I think it's
we-
it's a big thing that needs to happen. It's a big dream Lily has, and so all kinds of people need to be working on it in lots of different ways.
so good. Such a good word. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed listening to Melissa and the lessons that they've learned, the hopes that they're carrying, as much as I did getting to have the conversation with her. It was really hard to keep it to the length that we did because I wanted to keep digging and asking more questions and
Didn't
obviously invited.
you signed up for one of her
I
storytelling? So
know,
you
yes,
like
I
basically made
obviously,
her have one in San Antonio.
so obviously I've already signed up. Haven't started yet, but I'm excited about whatever that will look like. What did y'all think? What's resonating with Josh, Shannon? What did y'all think? How did you connect with what she shared?
Go for it, Shannon.
Okay. Oh, well, I love it. I mean, I love Melissa. So, I love that, their project actually had its origin like way back in the day through some other work they were doing with a story project in young adults. And so I loved that it just feels like it's been incubating for a long time in her and Mark. And I was thinking, I bet you were just loving having that conversation. Even, there isn't a story without a listener.
Mhm.
It feels very right-sized for them, and it feels like out of she started with, "Look, we already had a commitment to narrative practice." So she started with that, which this is not new, it's just how do we expand it, and how do we do something that really can ripple out? And then I love the other thing that she said, which is like, man, that bit in the grant, I love that she quoted the RFP, right? Like, that this is the opportunity for a fresh wave of storytelling about the vibrancy and hope of Christian faith and life. And like, we want that. And I just felt like there was a line in her conversation, which was like, we want to do this. So yes, that is what happens because we want it. There were so many things. Like, I loved like the way they're doing scripts. I was the same. I was like, well, I want to be a part of that conversation around what's the best dinner you had. And then hear like Jesus, story to that. And then one more thing, and then I'll quit talking. We'll just, I also thought so juxtaposed to the way people think about this grant changing the national story. I loved the bit where she said, so I think of like Christianity as a big family, but a few branches are getting all the attention. That's not my family. And I thought, oh, that's also like a really lovely frame. And I guess I feel that about their work. It feels so accessible. That's everything about their project and their grant just feels like it's in their wheelhouse, but it's also accessible for us all to imagine participating in it. So
I agree.
There's clear overlaps with the structure of our own project, which is rooted in these sort of local storytelling events across the country. And then, with a national campaign component to it, but which is not an afterthought for us, but is secondary in terms of order of operations or even how important it is for us. Like if we could only do one, we would do the local. And so I was like, jotting down notes the whole time, listening to her and thinking like, well, I do want to have a deeper conversation because I do think that this is where all these stories of hope come from. I mean, our own project was, I think we're in the process, we're going to change the name before we actually sort of go wide with it. But the working title internally has been Stories of Hope and Renewal. And because we just, so much of I love that was in the RFP, and I love that she picked up on it too. And it's like there was this other sort of meta conversation though that I also found to be very interesting, which maybe we could touch on here, is that when it is so tempting, because I've been on the other side of this for a long time. It was really hard for me as a professor, especially, and then even starting off when I moved outside of the academy, to get inside this what felt like this iron fortress of Lily and to understand what they were thinking, and to hear her say oh, we pitched this a long time ago and we didn't get funding, and it did, and nobody was interested, and blah blah blah, and then it came back around, because I think it's easy to think those people have lots of Lilly grants, or they're in this, everything they do is successful. So Chris Leach told me, he was our guest in the first episode. He told me after the recording, because NSCYM has a lot of these grants, and he will occasionally write stuff for other people on contract. And he said somebody asked him how did you get so good at getting all these Lilly grants? And he's like, well, I got good at it by not getting Lilly grants. I've been rejected for so many and written so many proposals that didn't work. Which is, I think, just such a key. That is exactly how I feel. And so I thought that was really, I thought it was so nice of her to share that little bit of the process of this project coming to be.
Yeah, no, I really loved that they also are thinking about, as they train people, they're thinking about how it leads to distribution for other resources, not just their own.
Yeah.
And I do think there's lots of big questions for me in distribution, full stop, right? So all three of us were in Dallas a couple months ago, and, the Holy Post is really the only one there that already has a distribution, kind of methodology and center. But it's I do think some of the hunches they're making feel right, which is well, we keep training 50 storytellers that run that each one runs 3 story circles. Well, each one of those 50 is touching 21 people. And then you really can create a ripple out. So I really like that.
I like that
I don't
too,
know.
and it makes me think like the value of um the grantees being aware of what each other is doing, I think is really important because of that. I think that there are a number of these kind of cohort based or circle conversation based projects across the country going on. And others asking big questions are like, how are we going to find communities to talk about the stuff we're making? And it's like, I
Yeah.
really do feel like collectively there's a really valuable distribution model that I hope that somehow we can harness in a helpful way for folks.
Even for
Absolutely.
us working with 3 big denominations, like, it's like the storytellers, us being aware of each other and what we can all do to help sort of amplify each other's voices is important because even the denominations, A, don't know what either the other denominations have. Like, the Lutherans don't know what the Presbyterians can do in terms of dissemination at all. And B, the assumptions that they made were, like, not true. Like, the
Yeah.
Presbyterians are like, well, we have this extended learning program and we've got this great magazine that people read. And, the Lutherans or Episcopalians were like, well, we don't have any of that. Like, none of that works over here. And it was just like, you cannot even make some default assumptions about sort of like how distribution
Yeah.
works internally, which I know is like this whole other question alongside, like, how do we do this external messaging? But the dissemination thing is very real.
Very real. I do think one of the things I really appreciated about the conversation, Elizabeth, and I was glad um you kind of asked her these questions that got her to, like, they're a year in, but like they've just done their first big training. But like she just talked about, we've got to train people. Well, before we can train people, we have to develop a process. And before we develop a process, we've got to hire people to operationalize it. Like there are all these steps, which I'll tell you, it's good for me because I feel like we're going slow. So it feels very permission giving to like lay the foundation well, to then and go. I think the other thing is they only are doing it for 4 years. A lot of people are doing it for 5. And I think we did that with our like, Rooted Good, like our Thriving Congregation grant. We did that and it paid off because sometimes just shrinking it when you're doing a lot of learning helps.
I really liked their what they're doing reminded me of my spiritual direction sessions with my spiritual director of very practical ways of how question asking that help people get, where does Jesus intersect with the everyday pieces of your life, and where do the stories that we tell about Jesus resonate with that? And I I don't know. I think as somebody, I'm 37 years old. I grew up in the church. I've worked for the church. I've dedicated my entire career to working with pastors and churches. But sometimes really find myself not at home. Like sometimes I feel the RFP was like written for somebody like me in many ways. Like I find myself like, oh, are they trying to get me back into the church in the way that, that I am feeling less inclined to be? And I think listening to Melissa's project, I was like, oh, but that is compelling to me. That is wildly compelling. And even off camera, when we weren't recording, she just talking about their motivations felt so authentic and true. And that I think is reflected in their process. And so really grateful, I think, for that approach. And it reminded me, of the importance and role that spiritual direction has played in my life. But to experience that in a communal setting, I'm excited for the folks that are participating with them.
I agree. What I loved is she was talking about that part of their process was she just kept saying, everyone can tell a story like that. And they're beautiful stories. And like that's where God is, right? Like, so I agree. There's something that is beautiful and compelling about that. And I love that she said they invited people to participate across like the 3 sectors, like congregations or church related orgs, but then also individual practitioners. And I thought that same thing, like if spiritual directors start doing this in community, what's that gonna like what's the impact of that gonna be? I kind of want to go, well, that could be exciting.
Does it
Yeah.
make you wonder? I mean, I've been thinking about this as both like a supply side and a demand side. Like on the one hand, people aren't very good at telling the stories, even though I agree with Melissa that everybody does have them, or, so many more people have them than are being told and are really compelling, about their engagement with faith or God or religion in a variety of ways. But also, like, we don't train people very well at the seminary level. Like, religious professionals are not trained to hear them, get them, sort of invite them, participate in them even. I'm not even sure they sometimes know their own. And so the idea that she's doing this at a seminary is like, and I know that there's more other seminaries involved, and we have one involved. It's super interesting to me because I'm like, well, what would that look like? What if there was, what if ATS had an accredited track for storytelling classes across America? In fact, one of the like wildly audacious things that we're going to try and do in ours is to have a class offered for credit jointly across 3 seminaries, across a ELCA, PCUSA, and Episcopal Seminary, and just to see, mostly as like an exercise in ecumenism, to see like, can we get these groups to actually work together and navigate their way through all the pieces of that. But we think it's really important that there's like a theology around this, and there's a training system that allows for this to be more than this sort of parachurch effort. I mean, if there were embedded professionals doing the day-to-day work of congregations that was also storytelling and story listening, that'd be huge.
Well, and I feel like all of these systems are built around everyone having the right answers, like our educational systems, having answers to questions. I mean, the idea of having an entire class on how to develop questions versus trying to have answers to all of them would make me excited. Like, that's why I kept wanting to ask, like, what are all the questions? I didn't want them to disclose their secret sauce, but like, what are all the
But why not?
questions?
Like,
Yeah.
we've seen that now twice. Like, I think that, and I'll be curious to see if this tracks across all the projects. It's like, we're seeing very specific examples of good questions to ask. And when I was writing Faithful Futures, my publisher was encouraging me, like, no, put in specific questions for youth ministers, youth directors to ask their teenagers. I'm like, surely they know how to do this. Like, they don't need me telling them, like, I'm not in direct ministry. And my editor's like, no, they need to know the question to ask. Well, okay, I guess it seems simple, but it is so important.
Well, it makes me think of that old Henry Nouwen quote, right? Answers without questions do damage to the soul. And I think that's it. I think people are so trained to give answers, but I do think it's the stories they're getting people to tell, right? It's not like their story of faith. It's like, what's the story of the best meal you've had, right?
Yeah.
Like, that gets you somewhere else to then get to the intersection. And I wonder if there's something that is like, it just makes it so accessible. Again, it's this accessibility piece.
And one more quote for good measure, we need another. I was just looking it up, but the Ched Myers quote I kept thinking of is that the logic of empire is answers to questions, but the logic of the kingdom of God is questions to answers. And I think some of his writing kept coming to mind too, as I was listening to Melissa and what they're trying to do. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Very cool. It was great.
Good.
Thank you for doing it, Elizabeth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
thank you.
Any opportunity to talk to Melissa Wiginton, I'll take it.
Can we point out one other thing real quick, that she touched on the fact that they had baked evaluation in from the beginning, which I thought was super critical. And so like, Shannon, the people at EffectX, we've recently been in relationship with them too. We do a lot of the same work. I mean, they're doing evaluation for several nurturing children grants, and so are we. And I just love that, like, it's not just finding an evaluation partner, but finding one who understands. The way we talk about it at Future Faith is doing work that is formative and summative. Like, yes, you need the summative, like, impact evaluation work at the end to figure out if you made, if you moved the needle on whatever it was that you're trying to move the needle on. But somebody who's with you the whole way from the beginning to do the formative work of feeding back to you, like, from everything from listening sessions to more formal kinds of research and data collection, to be able to say, oh no, maybe we should make a strategic tweak to the project here based on what we've been learning along the way. Look, I'll always put in a plug for research, learning, and evaluation.
I was going to say sociologist putting that. That does make sense.
Yeah.
I'm glad you bring it up.
Shocker,
I think
right?
the thing that I think to people that are listening, I think if you can find someone to be a learning partner in this grant and do it early, do it now. And I think, Future Faith is, you can't go wrong, right? Like and I don't know what your capacity is and how much more evaluation.
No, we could definitely handle. I mean, we would love to, but That is but the key is the
EffectX
approach. Yes.
out there, but it's like, I think so often. I love that that Melissa said, she did it at the beginning, and it's like different than any other grant she's done. And they're
Mhm.
great. I mean, yeah, I love the guys at EffectX too. So I sent her a little message, said, I'm so glad you're doing it,
Yeah.
So yeah,
All right.
good.
That's the end of our nerdy talk for what was that, like 3 minutes of
Yeah,
research, learning, and
before this,
evaluation?
But
before this,
that,
none of
the
what we
thing
said
is,
was nerdy. Before this, none of what we said was
None of
nerdy.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
none of it. But here's the thing. Here's what I want to say though. Evaluation is about learning, right?
Right.
And it helps you keep making. It informs your strategy. And if you wait
Well,
until the end, it's too late.
It's too late. And
It's
we
just too
started
late.
explicitly messaging it as research, learning, and evaluation. We see those as 3 different things. And so but even though it's a mouthful, we keep talking about it that way with our partners because we think all 3 of them are important. Like there is some
Yeah.
sort of like field level research that can often be really important to help you understand where the landscape is. And then there's learning as the project goes along, but you also want evaluation intermittently and at the end to understand impact. So all 3 are critical.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. So that was great.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, thanks again, Elizabeth, for
Absolutely.
Thanks,
the conversation
Elizabeth.
with Melissa.
That was really super. Well, folks, this has been, episode 2 of the podcast. So thank you so much for joining us. A huge thank you to Shannon, Elizabeth, and our guest, Melissa Wiginton. If we get our act together, we'll drop all these like links and things in the show notes, and hopefully you're able to click along and learn along and follow along with their projects as they unfold, just like yours does. I mean, we're here to try and build a stronger storytelling ecosystem in whatever way that we can contribute to that. So if you have ideas, feel free to reach out. Very accessible. You can find me, Josh, at futureoffaith.org. So if you want to dig deeper, we're going to have a whole suite of resources, webinar stuff. We'll put up all these podcasts on futureoffaith.org/storytelling. Thanks, everybody, for listening. You've been listening to the Backstory podcast. For all the episodes and more resources, head over to www.futureoffaith.org/storytelling.